I'm going to slightly segue into another one, into another thought. So, but it's related to this, and it's going to be related to the next story. I had a conversation with a gentleman who voted for Donald Trump today. We're at work in the break room, and he says, "Hey, did you watch the inauguration?" And I said, "Well, no, I haven't had the opportunity to see it, but I'll check it later." And he asked me, he says, "Yeah," he says, "I think between the two, it was better off for Trump to win." That shocked me slightly, because I didn't necessarily think he voted for Trump. But he continued, he said, look, he says, Democrats have this thing with identity politics, that they believe that they can, get someone who's black or get someone who's a woman, and that they can essentially get those demographics. And so when people are being attacked in a particular way, let's say calling them sexist or something else, that those demographics will flock to their side. He said, but the problem is that those guys are singular. That's not the collective. And when Trump is giving an economic message that deals with people's wallets, that's going to hit home to more people. And what could I say to him? He's right. He is right. I mean, one party was talking about economics. The other party was talking about how horrible the other guy was. He's right. So he further continued. He said, I asked him, I said, you're right, I agree with you. And I even agreed to the degree that I could even take it further in regards to that. I think I was probably a little bit more harsh on Democrats than he was. I said, but what do you think he's going to do? Like I get that you didn't necessarily want Hillary in, but what do you think Trump is going to do? And he says, well, I don't know, but the Democrats have failed. It was somebody else's turn. And I said, but dude, he put that billionaire into the education secretary. I mean, the other guys in the EPA, even though he's trying to attack the EPA, he's going to explode the debt when he gives these guys a tax cut. But what do you think he's going to do for you? Like, what do you really think he's going to be able to do what he's saying he's going to do? And he said, well, Democrats failed. He says, I mean, look at what took place over the last 8 years. And again, he's right. Like, I think I've said this before. Obama created 10 million jobs. 95% of those jobs were part-time or contract. The unemployment rate is down to 4.3. But a large part of that is just people who gave up looking for work. They were so distraught, they just stopped looking. Again, I can continue. 95% of the gains over the course of this entire presidency went to the top 1%. I can continue. Half of the country, literally, half of the country is in poverty. We're at the point where the average wage at this point, I think, is like $30,000. African Americans have lost 70% of their wealth since the crash. That's not a functioning economy, man. I mean, they're propping up these banks with trillions of dollars. The Federal Reserve has been obscene in the money they were lending off, or just giving to the banks. So what can I say to him? He's right. I mean, it's a hard case to make, where he's essentially saying, look, and I'm the one that knows the stats. I didn't vote for Trump. I voted for Jill Stein. But I still had, it was kind of this thing of, oh, dude, you're right, but what I told him, that I tried to impress upon him, I said, you get that it's kind of difficult to kind of get over the hurdle that as an African American, or maybe as somebody who's a Muslim, or maybe even a woman, when he was so vicious in going after these demographics, that you guys will put some other concern over our well-being. That from our standpoint, that is a difficult pill to swallow. And look, there was no animosity towards me at all. I mean, he had any issues of race, no issues of gender. It purely boiled down to economics. And his understanding of what was reality was legitimate. Like, so it's not like one of these cases where somebody's showing a Trump supporter and the guy is saying something like bringing back the Confederacy. No. It was just the basic, well, look, and he said something else. He said, look, Republicans are going to give money to the rich. He says, but they're more shameless about it. Democrats like to lie about it. They're just as obsequious, but they lie. So they don't necessarily do what they say they're going to do when they get in positions when they get in office. So to some degree, he felt like, well, they're hypocrites. At least these other guys, we know where they stand. Again, he's right. He's right. But I need both sides, though, to kind of come to a realization, though. Trump is not going to make America great again any more than Obama was pushing hope and change. I mean, these are things that people say, but there's more to it than that. I would own up and say, yes, I fell for the hope and change thing. I thought we were putting a progressive in office, and that is not what we got. In the same way that I think that a lot of people, when they voted for Trump, they thought, drain the swamp. They thought he meant it. They didn't realize that the moment he got in office, he was going to hook up with the same Goldman Sachs types that he bitched about on the campaign trail. And he was going to put sharks back in the swamp. The people that he was putting in his cabinet were people who gave him a lot of money. Essentially, I'm not even going to work with a middleman. I'm going to just put you in the office in that role. You don't like the EPA? Here's the EPA. Have at it. Look, you guys have been had. I'm sorry. Trump is going to cut taxes on corporations. It is going to balloon the debt to some ridiculous amount of money as the government is not bringing in that cash. Those people are going to take that money that he's given to those corporations and tax cuts and everything else, which don't really spur the economy because companies just put that money in their pocket. But they may do a job or two. But the fundamental underlying problem, Trump is never going to touch. So it's never going to work. The problem is the system itself. It's not any individual aspect thing. Look, a corporation's job is to make profit. That's all it wants to do. You as a worker are expensive. So if they can turn you into a robot, if they can push your wages down, if they can ship your job overseas, they're going to do it. It allows them to make more cash. That's the point. That's a capitalistic point. You can't, how are you going to force that corporation to hire workers under this model? I don't know how you're going to do it. How are you going to force them to not automate their processes? I mean, this process will fail just by virtue of the system itself. Will Trump get a job boom? He might. I mean, it depends on how much money he's going to spend. These guys who were deficit hawks when Obama was in office just raised the debt limit by $9 trillion. This is kind of my point, guys. They're lying to you in the same way that the Democrats are lying to their people. Look, I'll give you an example. So, during the time where Obama was in office, they kept saying, nope, we can't, nope, debt ceiling. We can't do any more debt. They raised the debt ceiling by $9 trillion. Republicans, when they are out of office, they talk about the debt. They feel that that's a way that they can restrain social programs. So when Ronald Reagan was in office, Ronald Reagan's idea was, well, I can spend a huge amount of money, we can balloon the debt, and Democrats will have a hard time finding money to pay for their social programs. So that's what the Republicans' modus operandi has been. Spend like drunken sailors, so when they're out of office, Democrats have to figure out some way to deal with the programs. And that's what they've done. Republicans do not care about the debt. I know they keep saying that, but they don't. Just look back over the years and see what the debt is when they leave office. So that's for them. For Democrats, in the same way the Republicans scream about the debt when they're out of power, Democrats scream about inequality. And they sucker people in on this. So look, this is from the HuffPost. In a little noticed December 21 memo, the Obama and Clinton allied Center for American Progress presented a path forward, emphasizing anti-corruption efforts and an economic renewal agenda. Although most of the policies CAP offered could have been found somewhere in Clinton's vast 2016 platform, the think tank's plan included a host of other items Democrats have neglected over the past 25 years, including calls to strengthen labor unions, fight monopolies, overhaul trade policies, and challenge the role of money in politics. Obama was in office for 8 years. He didn't do any of that. Zero. In fact, he did the opposite of that. Bill Clinton was in office for 8 years. He did the opposite of that. This is December 21st. Once they lost, now it's, hey, we need to find a way forward. I have an idea. Let's talk about that income inequality thing that I didn't do anything about and that I made worse through my presidency. Yeah, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. Let's do that. Look, Trump is not going to make America great again any more than Obama was actually hope and change. Obama was a brand name, like Nike or Reebok, in the same way that Trump is a brand name, like Nike or Reebok. Stop affiliating yourself with these parties and stop believing these guys when they're saying this shit. And I understand that this was a shitty choice in both ways. And if Hillary Clinton got elected, yes, there would have been potentially a war with Russia. So I'm not making this case that one was better than the other. I didn't have a dog in this hunt. And again, I dislike both of these guys because I think both parties are hypocrites. But stop being affiliated with just people. I guess that's my point.